All right, well, we might as well get started here. Good morning, and start by logging into your Scratch page up in the top. You're going to log in. You can always see what's in your studio or what you've already done by clicking the folder with the S on it. Whenever you click on that, we can go down to Digital Art 1, and we're just going to go to See Inside. So the whole point of today's lesson is going to be to create a model where we can replicate things much easier. Instead of having to build the same thing over and over again from scratch, it's the name of the website too, but instead of having to build it from scratch, we can create a block that's all our own and then build from that each time. So today's lesson is going to be focused on changing our scanner. If we just run through our project, let's make sure we turn it on turbo. Once it's on turbo mode, we just click the red or the green flag, and we can see what our project did. Remember, it turned everything into black and white. So I don't really want to go through that process anymore, but today we're going to replicate that part of the code. Okay, so what we're going to do with today's project is we're going to make it so that it turns black sometimes and another color another time. In order to do that, I'm going to have to replicate this section of code. What I want to do is create a block of my own. So if you go down to the pink dot, it's My Blocks, and we'll do Make a Block. Where it says to make a block, we're going to name our block Black and White. And that's simply because this is a black and white code that we're putting in. Now we have to define what the black and white code is going to be. If we look through our code that we've had already, this part down here, where I do the if statement, this is what the if else, that's what makes our project turn black and white, right? So if I make that attached to the black and white now, by doing that, now I have it set so that this now defines what makes it black and white. So if I click on this, that's the entire part of the code that makes it run its scanning process and turns it to black and white. So now if I put this back into our code, now I tried to click this green and it's not going to do anything because I took all of this out. But if I drop this now back into our code, then you'll see whenever I click the green arrow, it's running this segment right now because the black and white block is back into here. And again, we don't want to wait all the way to the end, so we can stop it. So now I've created a block called black and white. If I want to make it so that I can change it to something else, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another block. And I'll call this block, say, red and white. And now it's going to want me to redefine what red and white is. In order to do that, I'm going to go into my costumes. And here where it's black, if you right click on that, you can duplicate that block. Now it gives me black 2. I'll rename that red. Then down here where it's black, let's change our fill color so it's red. And if I click on the little paint can and click on the black block, now it's changed it to red. So we can go back to our code now. I'm going to detach this for a second. Maybe. And I'll duplicate this just by right-clicking and duplicate, and then attach it to red and white. Put this black up with black and white. So now I've defined another red and white block. If I ran this script again, it would still make it all black, because even though I've made a costume that's red, I still haven't made it so that it actually is red. So we're going to switch our costume so that when it touches the color black, and now it's switching to red. Lastly, I need to go up into here and put a new control in under the black and white. It says if I do something, and we'll make this go into sensing and put when the space key is pressed, then, and now we're going to have it run our red and white script. So now when this program comes down to here, it jumps over to here into the black and white. And it also says if I press the space key, then it's going to run this script instead. So now if I start over, you'll see it's going to do the same thing it had been doing. But as soon as I hold the space key down, it switches it to red. When I let go, it switches back to black. And I can decide how it's switching colors the entire time. Can anybody think of how they've seen something like this before? It's not necessarily where you press a key, but just in your daily lives. When do you see something like this change colors? Or as soon as your camera recognizes something, something happens, anything like that? Whenever we look at like the programming behind Snapchat, so Snapchat recognizes your face, right? And that's when it puts the dog ears on. But if you aim your camera at a chair, then it doesn't put dog ears on a chair. So what Snapchat is actually programmed to do is when it recognizes your face, or any face, it automatically puts the dog ears on. Otherwise, it leaves it the same. That's kind of like where we have our black and white. If it's black and white, no matter, even if I turn that filter on, or that, I don't even know what you call it, I think a filter. But if I turn that filter on that would put the dog ears on something, it still doesn't recognize a face, so it would be running the black and white portion of the program. As opposed to whenever it recognizes a face, it switches to what would be the red and white portion of the program. The reason that we would define blocks within a Snapchat filter like that is that I wouldn't have to want to write the programming code every time for every one of those different filters. I know there's usually like 10 to 15 different filters on there. So I wouldn't want to have to rewrite that code every time. So if I just define that code as something and then reference it, it would make it so that as soon as I start to program that, all I would have to do is put in red and white, and it would put that filter on, or the programming behind it, like the face recognition stuff. So that's where this comes into like real life applications. I don't know if you've ever done it, but if you right click like on a random web page, and if you go down and it says view page source, you'll see it brings up a new tab, and there's all this stuff that doesn't seem to make sense, right? And the reason it doesn't make sense is because each part of this is a different part of the code. But this is all the coding that goes behind the web page that you're actually looking at. And so if you had a website of your own, you could copy all this coding down, literally copy and paste it, and it would bring something up. Now, in this case, it's probably going to create a problem because I have a polyfills script here, this part of the code. You see that happen every so often. You'll see the arrow, the exclamation point, and then it'll say something. Every time it's doing that, it's referencing a different part of the code that we can't see. So it's referencing something that we could go back to and look at if we had access to this code. But every time you see this green, that's what it's telling you. So this is just like this little green script here, this part of the code, is exactly what we just did whenever we created our pink blocks of red and white. So if we were typing that into a web page, we would do arrow, exclamation, I think it's 3 dashes or like minus signs, and then you would put red and white in, and it would run this part of the script. So yesterday's lesson and today's lesson, that's what you have to do for your homework assignment tonight. You get to pick either one of those. You can either do what we did yesterday, or you can do what we did today and submit that as an assignment. Excuse me. Whenever you create assignment, instead of copying over your digital art 1, I should have done this in the beginning, but that's my bad. Save as a copy and just make this digital art 2. Then click share. Now as we go through this, it's going to follow our code exactly the same way that we had it, switching between black and red. Does anybody have any questions?